Jerry's made a couple of these points already quite strongly. There are a number of things you should work on if you want to get leadership aligned and supportive of occupational health and safety as a priority. One is, as Jerry indicated, most times you can look carefully at the costs of a poor safety record, largely reflected in workers' compensation payments, and work on these. A second technique is to ensure that there is a safety-based set of questions on employee surveys. Most, certainly mid to large-sized companies, have undertake surveys, and it's quite interesting. In a poorly performing company, the employees will tell you if they feel that there's inadequate attention to their work environment, poor processes, or poor safety habits. A third Jerry also mentioned, which was usually on a board there will be at least one director who is either interested or can be persuaded as to the merits of safety and be a champion for safety. It's probably more likely to be an effective avenue to the CEO than any other path that you can select. And now in an environment where boards are carefully balanced, every board director now has a high sense of responsibility for doing their job properly. You'll, I think, almost without exception, find somebody who is persuaded, if not themselves already a champion of safety as a priority. And the last is to ensure that that benchmarking data are available and management are aware of where your company stands in comparison to some reference group. And as Jerry said, we're all kind of, or implied, we're all kind of competitive. We all want to be in the top quartile of some group. And so when you make the point that Australia is number 7 in a league table internationally, or your company is number 7 in an industry group, or bottom quartile in some relevant peer group, once that information becomes available, you'll find that the natural competitive instincts, particularly in the current environment, will help get the topic up near the top where it belongs. And while I've got control of the agenda here, Julie, one other point
I'm just wondering if I should sit down.
Yeah, why don't you do that? And I'll just keep going and I'll get onto the main topic in a moment. The other thing that Jerry reminded me of, I began my career in the late 70s at Kodak, which was then a significant manufacturing and export operation for which safety turned out to be an obsessive focus. And by the late 80s, they had a LTIFR approaching 1. And since that period, of course, what we now find that some of the companies in some of the most hazardous industries like mining, manufacturing, etc., are setting the standard for excellent performance. And progressively now, and I see this in the boards that I'm on the board of a financial services company and a healthcare company and hospitality group, that they are, I think, albeit later than manufacturing and mining, but they too now have clear metrics in terms of goals and continuous improvement plans and I think increasingly well-disciplined processes to deliver on improving performance, having taken the view that creating a safe environment for their employees and all of the constituents who deal with an organisation reflected a respect for the people that we're dealing with, but at the end of the day had all sorts of commercial benefits that I think now no longer need to be argued. And lastly, Jerry, you mentioned, it was new to me, that some occupations like fishing have an unusually high risk element to it. My own experience recently is there are some surprising sets of activities out there that are unsafe in the way that this community would define. And one of them is the performing arts. So if you want to see very high levels of incidents, admittedly of not fatal consequences, but nevertheless harmful, go and have a look at a ballet company or an opera company or a symphony orchestra in the pits of a performing auditorium.